Okay, it's 6:30, so we'll go ahead and call the December 3rd meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Ahern.
Here.
Bathke.
Here.
Janezer.
Here.
Heisler.
Here.
Ward. Willer.
Here.
Yadi.
Here. All right, item number 1 on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Okay, a second.
I'll second it.
All right. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Moving on, our next item is public hearing on zoning map amendment and preliminary site plan. We'll start with a staff presentation.
Okay, so this is a further phase of the Greenbelt Trail subdivisions, 12.25 acres. You can kind of see the location here. It's just east of, butts right up against Arlington Ridge. Zoning right now is interim development. It's just a holding pattern until they figure out the appropriate zoning they want. The future land use map designation is urban low intensity, which permits land use densities in a range of up to 8 units per acre. The request is for RS6, which would be consistent with the urban low intensity land use category. Just here's a layout of the preliminary plat. It's 33 single unit dwellings and just continues the road layout, the grid essentially of the previous phases, and just shows a connection to Arlington Ridge at one point. There'll be other connections further to the south. We did have a virtual Good Neighbor meeting on November 19th. Arlington Ridge is pretty active. It was really well attended. We were able to field some questions ahead of time. So we had a total of 19 people attended. So really, I thought it was an outstanding meeting. Talked about a lot of things just in general that we'll talk about tonight, just about the subdivision itself, about the other phases. And it was a good opportunity just kind of to talk about this development and kind of what's happening in the area. So it was really good. I think the people understandably recognize that it's not going to be a farm field forever. It's going to be developed. I think we've been indicating to them and the property owner that we think single family development abutting the Arlington Ridge subdivision would be appropriate. And I think that's one of the purposes of the request, to just say to the neighborhood and staff that, hey, that's what we plan to do in this area. So we appreciate that. Just some of the things we talked about at the meeting, which I thought would probably be a good thing to bring up. The timing of this phase of the development and the other portions of the Scanlon Family LLC. And here's a picture of the parts, Greenbelt Trail parts 2 through 7. They're in currently 3 and 4, so that they're about complete with construction, I think about January. That'll make the official connection to Arlington Ridge. You can see it at the bottom of your page. That would be Yorkshire Street. And then a portion of Hemingway, but it won't quite make that connection yet. But the area in red is what's under construction now. It's going to take some time for this portion. Now we're talking about Greenbelt 8, so this is Greenbelt Trail highlighted in red 3 and 4, so you still got 5, 6, and 7. Those generally phases, depending on if you combine them, take about a year, just depending on how sales go. And so you just kind of look to that progression of when 8 would come forward. It's going to be a couple of years, we anticipate. Another question we had is timing of the Iowa School District property, highlighted here. Eventually Hemingway Drive will come due east and then line up with Oak Lane northeast in the county. The area highlighted is owned by the Iowa Community School District. They're planning an elementary school there. I did reach out to them. They had no updates to provide with respect to timing or when they would have construction. But other improvements, along with Greenbelt Trail 3 and 4, they are constructing part of the trail on the south end. So you kind of see the zigzag. And it would connect up and then go north, we hope, into the school board property, and then a trail along the south side of Hemingway going out to the North Liberty Road Trail. Speaking of the North Liberty Road Trail, the design is complete. That's going out for bid. And so we anticipate the trail along the south side of Penn and west side of North Liberty Road will be completed next year, or substantially completed next year. So that's, as far as trail building, that's a huge trail connection. That'll be really wonderful. And so we really start to look at, as the other portions of the Scanlon property develop, are there opportunities to really enhance that trail network. So we're looking at those things. Notably with the trail project, we have dog park, obviously. We want to promote that people can walk to the dog park. I'm sure all of you have driven that section, and it's a little sketchy going through there. So we are looking at things like possibly reducing the speed limit next year. But in the design is a crossing, so a pedestrian island, if you will. So you're not kind of caught in the middle of the road as traffic's coming, and then the lighted beacons to warn people. We get a lot of requests for those lighted beacons. So we thought this one was a good location for it. Not a big fan of mid-block crossings, but what could you do here? The other alternative would be to build a tunnel, which would be great, but that's a complete road shutdown, and those are really expensive. So we thought Shive did a pretty good job with this design alternative. So this is kind of as you look through 2 through 7, this is along the west side. So this would just be continuation of the subdivision to the north. We just had another question about drainage impacts, if any. Most of the subdivision will drain. They'll capture their own stormwater and either move it south, or a portion they'll move it east to a temporary drainage basin that you see in this area. And the other question you have is like, well, why is this coming forward? This property is in the same sanitary sewer basin, so it can drain down into the same sanitary sewer infrastructure as parts 2 through 7. And so it just made sense from their planning perspective just to include this phase. The other portions that you see that are east rely on a trunk line sewer that comes underneath North Liberty Road and eventually makes its way over to the sanitary sewer lift station. Still a lot of planning, I think, with respect to that trunk line is pretty deep and it's expensive. So I would say that this is the low-hanging fruit, so to speak. I also think as you move east and you get closer to North Liberty Road, I think there's an opportunity more for a mixture of housing types. We always like to encourage that. You see some two-family in this, but I think it was appropriate adjacent to Arlington Ridge to be consistent with what's developed over there. And as you move east, I think there's more opportunity for multifamily or townhouses and things like that. And the other question we had was connection, if any, to the Arlington Ridge Trail. So that's not part of the city's trail system. That's a privately owned and maintained trail. So we did not ask them to connect to that. So that'll just be completely separate. We did have 2 findings because we have a rezoning and a preliminary plat. It achieves consistency with the approval standards for rezoning. And it also achieves consistency with 2 sections regarding preliminary subdivision plats. And staff recommends the Planning Commission accept those 2 listed findings and forward the 2 requests to the City Council with a recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Great. Do we have an applicant presentation?
Plat related to drainage. As Ryan mentioned, there's going to be a temporary detention basin with this development. A lot of the area does drain to the south in an existing basin that's already under construction. The rest of it will be captured in the temporary detention basin at some point when that area to the east does develop. It's still kind of in the master planning phase, or as Ryan mentioned too, there's a significant sewer trunk line that needs to come from the east to serve this area to just to east of Part 8. And their permanent detention basin will actually be located closer to North Liberty Road. And when, based on timing, that permanent basin will at some point take over all stormwater, and this temporary basin will be filled in. In addition, I guess the bigger thing is, as was presented, is that it does capture some additional sewer area. that we can service from the south in the existing Greenbelt subdivision. Obviously, this is going to be part 8, and so there's likely not much going to happen here for about 4 years or so. Things will kind of be built in phases, obviously depending on the market. So I just wanted to point out those couple of other items.
Great. At this point, we'll take any public comment. Okay. Any comments or questions from the commission?
Is the permanent detention basin that big ravine at the south end of the subdivision closest to North Liberty Road?
Yes.
Okay.
That's at least a portion of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And everything that's there, I mean, where that drains, nothing else has to be done as far as like the culvert that runs underneath North Liberty Road. Like
Nope.
that's all
all done.
That's all done and permanent. Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions?
If we're all okay with it, I move that the Planning Commission accept the listed findings and forward the zoning map amendment and preliminary subdivision plat to the City Council with a recommendation for approval.
Great. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Willer,
Aye.
Yachty,
Aye.
Bathke,
Aye.
Janezer,
Aye.
Heisler,
Aye.
Ahern.
Aye.
Great. We'll move on to item number 4, public hearing on zoning ordinance amendment. We'll start with the staff presentation.
Okay, so I recently forwarded a rather large zoning ordinance amendment, and we caught something after it had already gone through council. It happens. It really pertains to, if you go down to this table, I really doubled the size of this table, and what I'm trying to do is give flexibility everywhere I can in the code. And this is really for townhouses. And let me go back to this picture. I want to give people, if I understand really the Florida condo thing, disaster right now is really causing problems for lending institutions. I'm told but I still like the opportunity for flexibility of allowing individual housing units, if you want, on individual lots. Like, have a townhouse, they could be on 4 lots. You don't have to do it that way. I just want to give people the opportunity to do that if they wanted to. Where the error I came in was we want people to plat the lot first, build the townhouse, and then come in and put the lot lines exactly where the wall is. That's how we do it here. And so what I discovered was, we can't basically permit that at a reduced setback because they're not individual lots yet. So that cleans that up. Basically, if you have, let's see, so it says you have a 5-foot side setback if that side abuts an RM district. And so, it gives a lot of flexibility if you have, you could do a lot with 4 townhouses and then have another lot with 4 townhouses, or they could be individual. I think that's the flexibility. That's what I had in mind that we want. And it didn't make a lot of sense to have a 15-foot side yard setback, even if it was in a different development, to have a townhouse development abutting another townhouse development. Why would you have a 30-foot setback separating 2 exact same uses? That just didn't make a lot of sense for me. But we did say 5 feet unless that side yard abuts an RS district. It's 5 feet if it abuts an RM district, otherwise 15 feet. So, if you abut an RS or an ID or something like that, then you have the additional setback. That makes more sense to me. So that's the fix. That's it, basically. So it's just a cleanup.
For our viewers playing at home, you want to specify what the RM and RS?
Yes. So RM is residential, multi-unit, allows apartments, townhouses, and RS is single unit, allows for predominantly single family homes or single unit homes. Thanks, Grant.
Thanks for the clarification.
So we did have one finding that the proposed amendment would achieve consistency with the approval standards, and that the staff recommends Planning Commission accept that listed finding and forward the request to the City Council with a recommendation for approval.
Great. That does not appear as though we have any public comments. So any questions or comments from the commission?
This is why I'm glad we have you watching for us. Good catch. I mean, is that?
Great.
Yeah, and I've you try and talk to these projects to developers of but you know me, I'll keep doing this and once I get it right, it'll be time to do it over again. So
Okay. If nothing else, then do we have a motion?
I move that the Planning Commission accept the listed finding and forward the ordinance amendment to the City Council with a recommendation for approval.
And a second?
I'll second.
May we have a roll call vote, please?
Yadi,
Aye.
Willer,
Aye.
Ahern,
Aye.
Janizer,
Aye.
Bathke,
Aye.
Heisler.
Aye.
Okay, moving on. Item number 5 is approval of our previous minutes. Do we have a motion
I'll move to approve the previous minutes.
and a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Great. Previous minutes are approved. Moving on to item number 6, any old business?
I suppose it falls under old business, although not quite. We had a couple questions here, good questions about what's happening at the corner of Ranshaw and Penn. This was a site plan that was approved before I was here, and they kept asking for to extend the site plan, so it just kept getting extended. And then at some point, the trail connection got constructed. They said, we'll construct that trail connection along there, in order to construct it. We thought that was very reasonable. And it was just we call it a multi-tenant or a strip center commercial. Pretty straightforward request, but that's probably why you were like, I don't remember approving that one. It was approved a while ago. But, we're finishing up a couple of construction projects. Buckmoon Villas gets pretty close over there. You just mentioned Greenbelt's pretty close. Solomon's Landing Part 5 on the west side of Jones. We think that plat is looking good for to be on the agenda, hopefully, for next week for City Council. And then Liberty Commons, you see work going on out there. So lots of activity still in the city. It was a busy year. So thank all of you. And we do have business in January. So we're already starting there. So.
Okay, great. New business?
I think that probably covered it too.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Okay, if nothing further, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?